So now we're going to talk about service of process. It's a critical step.
It's jurisdictional.
Yeah. I think when people are new, there's a lot of mistakes with service of process.
They'll use FedEx.
Yeah. Once you master it, it's easy. You develop a standardized process. We'll talk about how to get efficient at it. But I would say the summons form, I would describe it as an intricate dance with this summons form, right? Between you, the court, and the government. There should be a government form to explain how it's done, but there isn't. And they just publish this summons form, and they expect the whole world to know how to use it.
There are pro se guys that talk about how to do service. So if you go to the U.S. District Court website, you may see a pro se, and it's often written by a bar association to help out. So that's a good place to start there.
Right.
Or really, you might want to just go to another practitioner, or the AIC the American Immigration Council has a good practice advisory on whom to serve and how to serve.
Right. As we mentioned in our section on working with local counsel, getting your summonses issued is something where there should be more standardization, but there isn't. So let's just start with talking through how you do service of process in a typical case. I'll just use my home jurisdiction, Eastern District of Virginia, as an example, because I think it's a fairly representative, typical place. So when we file our complaint, we file the proposed summonses. We actually don't attach them to the complaint. We have to do a separate ECF entry just for the proposed summonses. That part is a little weird. Most places you can just attach it to your complaint. But when we file our complaint, we file at the same time a separate docket entry with our proposed summonses. You have at least 3 every time you're suing the government, at least in EDVA, because they allow you to do multiple summonses. And so within a day or two, the clerk will issue the summonses. That means he or she has stamped the clerk's seal on the first page, and it is now an official summons, and you can use it to inform the government about your lawsuit. So then you take that summons or summonses, and you mail it with a copy of the complaint and any exhibits to the government. You have to do it by certified or registered mail. Under FRCP 4I. When it comes to, and you have to serve 3 entities: the local U.S. Attorney's Office, the Attorney General in D.C., and then also the agency or officer that you named as a defendant. So
there's also going to be, and we have a different approach to this, there's going to be a service address, and it's published, I think, in the Federal Register. There's also usually a different address on the DHS or the USCIS website or State Department website, but there's going to be a critical address. You're not going to serve the local field office in Denver. You're more likely going to serve a centralized address, and you need to make sure you have the correct one.
Before we get to that, can I just say something about serving the U.S. Attorney? Because that's the most important of the 3 of the mailings, right? So there's actually 2 options for serving the U.S. Attorney. You can either deliver it to them, or you can send it to them by certified or registered mail. So if you deliver it to them, you can either do it personally. Back in pre-COVID days, I would just go file my lawsuit in person at the court, and then I would go next door to the U.S. Attorney's office and bring them the stamp, the copy. I don't do that anymore.
If you had the summons issued.
Yeah, right. So
I do that in Denver. I actually drop off the summons myself because it's the fastest. And hiring someone and paying them $150 when I pay $5 for parking, it's easy enough for me in Denver just to drop it myself. But everywhere else in the country, I hire a courier because I want to have an affidavit from someone that's not me, and I don't have staff to do this. But I hire a courier using the National Association of Process, NAPPS. They have a website, and you can find different vendors that will do it based on geography on the zip code of the U.S. Attorney's Office. But I do that because I want, at least with mandamus cases, I want the 60 days to start as fast as possible. But you do the mail, right?
I do the mailing. Well, one thing in EDVA that is different from a lot of other places is the government's deadline will run from when you do the mailing. Now, in
From
most,
the postmark date.
From the postmark date, yep, that's a local rule, and I think the FRCP supports that. However,
the U.S. attorneys.
Yeah, that's not the practice in most places. In most places, the U.S. attorney will consider their answer deadline to run from when they receive your complaint.
And there's also two outliers, the District Court for D.C. and the District Court for Southern District of Houston. The U.S. Attorney's offices there accept service of process by email. These are leftovers from the COVID days, but it's really great because when you're talking about saving $150 for the courier service, you still get it the same day. I email it to either Houston or D.C. You have to be very careful. They have very, very specific requirements on their website, but it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. If you're doing mailings, you have to mail it to the civil process clerk at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Most U.S. Attorney's offices do not list that address anywhere. The District of D.C. actually lists the civil process clerk's address on their website. I love that.
It's on the civil division portion of the website.
Right. I don't know how other divisions are allowed to get away with keeping that address private. I used to assume that I would mail my service copy to the closest U.S. Attorney's office to the court. However, that doesn't always work. In a number of places, they will have one centralized address that might cover the whole state or the whole district. For example, I filed a case in the Greenbelt Division of the District of Maryland.
Yeah, it goes to Baltimore.
Right. So they have a U.S. Attorney's office in Greenbelt, but they don't really have civil division attorneys there. The civil process clerk is not there. They are in Baltimore. They don't publish that fact.
But what's going to happen is they're going to get the mail in Greenbelt, they're going to forward that mail to Baltimore, and you've now slowed your case down by 4 or 5 days.
Right. And so they came back to me, and we were arguing over when their answer was due, and they said, "You didn't serve our civil process clerk."
Yeah.
And true.
In Nebraska, they've told me all of our service goes through Omaha. You don't serve in Lincoln, Nebraska, even though the court sits there. It's just it's a local practice thing you just have to learn.
Right. There's especially likely to be one centralized address if it's a rural district where there's maybe, a couple of
Traverse City, Michigan. You're going to serve in Detroit, or you're going to serve in the main office.
Right.
Their offices often will say on the U.S. Attorney's website, the U.S. DOJ website, it'll say main office.
Right.
That's probably where the civil clerk is going to be sitting.
Yeah. So if you're in a rural area, a small town, it might even be unlikely that you're not going to be allowed to serve the U.S. Attorney's office that is in that place. So be careful. If you're unsure, you can always just call and ask, what's the address for your civil process clerk?
Or you can email the chief of the civil division.
Right.
They're going to know it automatically.
Right. As far as triggering the government's deadline, you have to do the 3 services, right? On the U.S. Attorney General, and the agency or the officer. However, the one that is going to set the deadline is service on the U.S. Attorney. So that's the most critical one, and that's the only mailing that seems to really matter to anyone. You have to check off the other 2, but it doesn't seem like anything is really done with the other 2. So I feel like if they revisited the rules, they would see that those other 2 mailings in many cases are obsolete and pointless, but you have to do them. So let's get back.
Do you use the green cards?
Well, all right, great tip. I figured this out recently. I use a mailing service, and I love it. It's called CaseMail. And it will...
I've used it.
Yeah. It will prepare certificates of service. It will track all your tracking numbers. If you're doing a lot of lawsuits, if you're doing them manually on paper, you prepare it by certified mail, and you attach a return receipt. Now, the rules do not say that you need a return receipt. However, there is a general expectation that you be able to prove when your case was delivered, right? So you do want to do that return receipt all the time. Now, I would say over half the time, the card doesn't come back. The USPS, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So if you're trying to get proof of delivery and the card doesn't come back, what you can do is you can download the tracking history from the USPS website. And every time I file proof of service, I file proof of delivery. It's not strictly speaking required. However, often it's kind of expected.
It's a good idea. I use a vendor called Postal Annex, and there's lots of different vendors, but Postal Annex, I email them my summons, and I basically create one PDF for each defendant, and I say, hey, attached is, with California, I get one summons. So I say, hey, I need, on page 4, there's all these different addresses. I need this printed 6 times. Please give me a quote for handling, printing, and for postage. And they do all of it for me with the green label, the green return card, and I just get a green card back in the mail, 2 weeks later.
Right.
And it's really affordable. They charge me maybe like $5 a package for handling. Yeah. It's very, very efficient. Yeah. I've used case mail before. It's harder for me to do that. It's easier for me just to send out the email. They come back and say it's $212. They have my credit card on file. I get a receipt, and then I've got tracking numbers on the receipt.
Right. So highly recommended, if you're doing more than a few lawsuits, find a vendor, a postal service vendor that works for you. All right. So let's get back to what you were saying about addresses for serving the agency. So most agencies will have like a chief counsel's office. It might be called something slightly different, but they all have attorneys. Often those attorneys are in D.C., right?
Or Maryland for USCIS.
Yeah. So, and there is a regulation that indicates where a lot of these addresses are. I believe it's, I believe it's 6 CFR 5.42, and there's an appendix to that regulation which lists the service addresses for a lot of the immigration agencies. I'll check that citation. If it's wrong, I'll put a little note on the screen. So you want to check that regulation. You also want to check the agency's website because they'll probably have a service of process address listed on their website. DHS, General Counsel has that. The State Department has a very specific address for all their lawsuits.
5.600.
It's a very weird address. And here's one thing about government addresses. There are some zip codes that belong just to the government, right? So there's a lot of DHS zip codes, and it can be confusing sometimes.
-0485. If I don't see 0485, they're not serving the Office of General Counsel at the right address in D.C.
Right.
485 is such an immigration specific number. To see that in their zip code is pretty funny.
That is funny. So let's say you sued 3 officers from the State Department. There's only one address for all of them. It goes through the Office of Legal Counsel?
Yeah, it's the Office of Legal Advisor.
Office of Legal Advisor, right. Okay. Now,
the
Brian.
Executive Office of Legal Advisor.
Okay.
I send them 3 different packages.
You do? Okay. And, there's other approaches you could take. You could try just sending them one, you could send them 3, like, with a divider in the middle.
I like having a different tracking number for each proof of service.
Yeah.
I'm an old school conservative person.
I agree with you.
It gets expensive.
You want to keep things standardized, right? So having a receipt number for each defendant is what you want.
When you sue the State Department, do you have 15 defendants? Do you serve 1 or 2 defendants?
When I started doing litigation, I would sue everyone in the command chain. Now, pretty much any lawsuit against USCIS, I'll just sue the director of USCIS. Right. State Department, there's a little more texture to it because like a consular officer might have special power to issue a visa that maybe the Secretary of State doesn't have, or vice versa.
And then you're doing a John Doe or Jane Doe, because you don't usually know the consular officer's name.
Right.
But you can find the consul general.
Yes.
And sometimes you can find the chief of the consular section. I use the Department of State Key Officer Directory.
Key Officers list. Key Officer Directory?
It's a directory. It's actually a phone book, and it gets updated every 6 months or whatever. That's really a timely, you can just Google it, and also you can go to the actual embassy or consulate website.
Yep.
That often is updated more frequently than the directory.
If you don't know who the officer is, you can just sue them by their title. That's Rule 17D. And I've been doing that more and more often lately because this fool's errand of trying to keep track of government personnel, it can be a waste of time.
The USCIS acting director changed about 2 weeks ago.
Yes, they're just changing all the time, especially right now.
Angelica, Alfonso.
Reyes, something.
Royals.
Royals, right, yep. And so I don't want to have to check who it is each time, so I'll just list them by their title. Right.
And some courts are funny about Jane and John Doe. You need permission sometimes. So what Mark's saying, by suing them by title, totally okay. They automatically are substituted by each other under federal rule.
Right. Yes. Each time the officer for that position changes, your case caption is automatically modified to reflect who the new officer is. I believe that's rule 25 something. Is that right?
Yeah, 25B or D.
I want to say D. I want to say 25D. But anyways, often you'll find out who the new officer is when DOJ sends you a pleading, and with a different caption, you're like,
there's a
what is
footnote at
this?
the bottom that says we've substituted so and so.
Yes, it's a hassle. You can avoid it. Just list them by their title. You'll feel liberated.
It'll save you time, and naming the person by name doesn't change the outcome of the lawsuit.
Right. There are some places, like in the Third Circuit, if you file a petition for review of a removal proceeding, even if you name like Merrick Garland, it's my experience that the court will just amend it to U.S. Attorney General.
Okay.
Right? So let's see. Anything else to say about suing or about serving the agency or the officer?
Well, people sometimes, I've seen my co-counsel or people I mentor, they really have this idea they want to serve the local office here in Denver. They want to serve, that person. And I'm like, no, more than likely they should just ignore it. It should go in the trash bin. Yeah. So you really have to serve. It's almost like a soccer goalie. If you don't do it correctly, you fail. So you need to serve by that actual address that's in D.C. or Maryland.
I will say this. I know all these agencies have these regulations saying you can only serve process at this address. I really question whether those are enforceable, because let's say you sue the local field office director and you mail it to them at their official address. Do they really have the power to act as if they did not get service of process just because their regulation says to send it to Maryland? I don't know.
The district courts,
I question that.
Also, I believe, allow you to serve under state rules. And that's the level of complexity I've never gotten involved in.
Let me just pose it this way. Me, as a private individual, could I issue a policy saying, even though I live at this address, you can only serve me at my office?
If you're a corporation.
Corporations have to have registered agents. That's a provision under state law.
That's sort of what they've done with the Federal Register.
I don't know that a private party can just deny service of process when they've actually gotten it. Right. So if you actually serve someone local in violation of one of these agency regulations, don't worry about it too much. I've done that, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. However, as a general matter, you do want to follow their regulations.
And if you serve the U.S. attorney correctly, as you said, that's what's going to trigger the 60 days. So once you serve the U.S. Attorney's Office, once they enter an appearance, you don't have to worry about service anymore. Everything after that point is served by ECF. Right. When you sign up for ECF, you agree to accept all service by email. So the wonderful thing is, once they enter their appearance, if you have an amended complaint and they haven't entered their appearance, you have to serve them again.
Right. Let's talk about the delicate dance that happens with the summons form. So we've talked about this in various sessions, but let's just focus on it for a minute. So there is a standard summons form put out by the Administrative Office of U.S. Courts that is used in most jurisdictions.
Is that the A0440?
That sounds right, yep. It doesn't get updated very often. A few courts will have their own local form. Yeah. So you do, if you're new in a court,
DC especially.
Yeah, you want to check their whether they have a different version posted on their website. So you fill that out and you attach it to your complaint. Usually you have to have the defendant's address listed on there. It has your address. It has the case caption. I always make sure to type in the case number before I file it.
Or they'll get rejected.
Sometimes that hasn't been my experience. However, if you type it in the first page, the form will automatically copy it over to the second page, so your certificate of service can be more complete with less work by you.
But some courts will reject. I think Nebraska and California. I now am in the practice, when I'm filing my lawsuit, when I get my case number, I then go ahead and add it to the complaint.
Yes.
I add it to all of the proposed summonses. You don't need it for the civil cover sheet, but I go ahead and have the case number on all filings before I actually upload the PDFs into the system.
I agree. I do exactly.
Best practice.
I do exactly the same thing. I didn't do it for years, and there was no problem. It's more efficient.
And if they deny your summons, you might lose a day.
Yeah. Right. So you submit this proposed summons, clerk issues it, you do your mailing. Next, you have to prepare your certificate of service. And that is the second page of the summons form. And for a mailing, this is how I have my paralegal write it. On X date, I served this summons and complaint on the U.S. Attorney's Office by certified mail to the address listed on the summons.
And this is the other box toward the bottom
Yes.
of page 2.
You check the other box.
When I do my courier deliveries, I check off the first box, which is I personally served. And if it's me in Denver, I literally sign Brian Green, attorney at law. But if it's a process server, I fill it out as if it's them. I put in the address, the name of the authorized agent, the time and the date. And for the signature line, I say see attached affidavit.
Right.
And I type their name and their title and their address. And at the very bottom, there's an open field. I write see attached affidavit or declaration. And then page 3 of my proof of service is what I got from the courier company, the affidavit declaration that's signed with a date at the bottom.
Right. So you want to attach to your certificate proof of the delivery. Let's see.
So for certified mail, it's going to be the green card or the proof of delivery
Right.
off the website. Having those 3 things together just bulletproofs it. The court's not going to have any question about it.
Right. So for each person that you serve, you want the certificate of service, and then you want the proof of delivery.
And page 1 is the summons with the
Yes,
actual
I was about to ask that. Brian, do you file with your proof of service? Do you include the first page of the summons?
Yeah, I do a 3-page minimum.
Okay.
I want the title, the caption. I want the clerk's signature.
Yeah.
Page 2 is filled out with a signature. Page 3 is the proof of delivery. I use Adobe Pro, and I merge all the documents together, and I file them.
Right. And so then if you have 3 pages for each, and you have at least 3 mailings, then for your cases, you're going to have at least 9 pieces of paper.
Well, I
proof
file them
service.
separately. I do,
Oh, really?
I do a proof of service for each defendant.
So I prepare a separate one, but then I merge them all into one PDF.
I file one proof of service for the U.S. Attorney's Office. I file one proof of service for each of the defendants.
Okay.
And when it comes to the U.S. Attorney, the Attorney General, I will. The ECF systems are weird about that. They don't have a separate entry for civil process clerk, but some of them do. Some of them say, "Who have you served?" I'll type in civil process clerk on behalf of, and then I select one of the defendants.
Some jurisdictions you have to do separate CMECF entries, like DDC, right? You have to do a separate entry for the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Some don't.
However, in most places where I seem to practice, I've just merged all of them into one filing, and I just file it. And the docket, you have to use a specific docket entry. And the reason is that it will code
60
a 60-day deadline. If
It'll
you just
say for U.S. government or U.S.
Yeah.
agency.
Summons returned executed as to USA. That's the docket entry that you need. If you file it with the typical one, summons returned executed, that you're gonna
30
have,
days, you're errata.
You're gonna get some chuff from the clerk, right? You might not have to refile, but the clerk won't be happy.
So the way you do it covers everything. By my filing proof of service to the U.S. Attorney's Office right away, typically that's the last act I take. I still have served everyone, but by the time my green cards come in the mail, the U.S. Attorney's Office already entered their appearance and service has been waived at that point, or any challenge to service has been waived. So there are different ways to get it done. You'll learn based on the local practice what's going to work for you and for your court. And if it's wrong, you're going to get that errata from the clerk's office, and you're going to learn through the painful training or the psychological torture of having to deal with ECF problems.
Right. So after you do your mailings, you want to set a reminder to check them in a week or 2 and make sure that they've been delivered. If they have, you can prepare your proof of delivery. If they haven't, if it never got delivered, you don't have proof that it was delivered, you need to redo it. And that can be a pain because you might lose 2 or 3 weeks. It's a pain, but you really do want to redo it. It kind of stinks that the Postal Service could not do its job, and that impacts your lawsuit. You can't really do anything about it. You know, you have to make sure that you have the burden to effectuate service in full compliance with the rules.
With my practice of serving the U.S. Attorney's Office by hand delivery, I always accomplish that usually within 24 to 36 hours. Occasionally, if it's not a rush case, it might be 48 hours. But I know essentially the same week that my summons has been delivered, my proof of service is filed, and after that, the other mailings don't really matter as much. So my process costs more, but there's a lot more certainty. And I charge flat fees for my service of process costs. And they're flat fees. So if I'm doing a State Department case and I'm serving 15 defendants, I'm going to lose money on that one. But you need to make sure if you're using flat fees that your flat fees are covering your expense. And I want to have an extra $30 or $40 to cover my paper, to cover my toner, cover my internet costs. I'm emailing my vendor for it. So you want to have your flat fee be a little bit more than your average cost.
Yeah. And preparing all these mailings, especially if you're doing it by hand, it can really eat up a lot of time.
Before I used a vendor, my printer ran all week long.
Yeah.
And I would spend a quarter of my day pulling off, and stuffing envelopes. That vendor I use, I don't know if they pay their people $20 an hour, $23 an hour. It's like having a paralegal. Because if I file 5 or 6 lawsuits a week, that literally would be someone stuffing envelopes half of every single day of the week.
Right. When we did it manually, it was typical for my paralegal to spend 1 to 2 hours preparing the mailings, and then for preparing proof of service, maybe an hour, hour and a half, which is a lot of time. So use a vendor. They can really save you a lot of time. And, if you have 15 lawsuits going, the green cards are coming back at different times. It can be tricky to keep track of which ones go to which case. That's another huge benefit of having a vendor. They will organize and track all the tracking numbers for you, and you can, it saves a history of all your mailings. Highly recommend it.
If you're doing service right, you probably will very rarely ever have service contested.
Right.
I had it once in the Western District of Texas where my vendor was using priority mail, and they were giving me a tracking number, but it wasn't certified mail because the package was too big for priority mail.
Yes.
Or for certified mail. There's a weight limit.
So I'm of the opinion that the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure is the only thing keeping the certified mailing service alive. Is the only reason you would ever want to do something by certified mail.
Unless you're, if you're dealing with the IRS.
Sure. Other various legal purposes.
Very illegal. The legal field is keeping that going.
And when you're new at this, or if your paralegal is untrained, they might just say, well, I mailed it by priority. I got your tracking number. It's the same type of speed. What's wrong with that? Well, it's not allowed by the rules.
And a savvy assistant U.S. attorney will catch it.
Yes.
And they will say, I've reached out to the agency, but we're not officially dealing with this case until you've served us properly.
Right. Yeah. So do certified mailing.
It's a zero-sum game. It's jurisdictional. You have to do it correctly.
Yes. You're asking for the court to help your client, so you have to follow the rules.
If you can't do service correctly, you're not going to have credibility with the opposing counsel or the judges.
Yeah.
And if you don't file proof of service, the court never knows it happened. Even if the other side knows and they're working on it, if you don't have proof of service filed, after 90 days, that judge may have a tickle that is ready, and they'll say, order to show cause. If you don't show us that you filed service correctly, we're going to dismiss the case, and that is embarrassing.
Yeah, so in the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, it says you have to serve your case within 90 days of filing, or the judge can dismiss it.
For failure to prosecute.
Yeah, for failure to prosecute. Typically, they'll issue an order to show cause asking why the case should not be dismissed. So you do want to track these deadlines. The way I calendar things is when we do the mailing, as I said, I'll put a reminder 2 weeks out to check that they've been delivered. That's usually enough time for all the mailings to get there, if they are going to get there.
I've created worksheets before that are per district specific, and what you can do is you can make a worksheet that has these deadlines, these reminders, and you could save it as a PDF in your system, and then when you actually have filed your proof of service, instead of a check, you can put in the date.
Yeah.
This was filed on June 1st, and then, or if your paralegal is doing it, your law clerk's doing it, you could have them do that, and then you could check in your system, hey, okay, this was signed off on this date.
Let's talk about some of the regional variations in service of process. This is a very rich topic.
At least until recently in Chicago, you had to email your summonses to the clerk's office,
Yes.
and there was nothing in the rules that ever said that. They've updated their ECF system, and you're now filing them, I think, as attachments.
Right. But they had a little guide on their website, so as long as you knew to look for that guide, you would be okay. District of Massachusetts, the clerk just issues you a blank summons. You fill in the addresses, and then you mail it. As far as I know, you can do as many as you want.
It's so weird for me to alter a summons after it's been signed. It really feels weird.
And it's weird for the support staff because they want it to come in a final form.
California, you get one summons, and your last page is an addendum that has all the addresses.
Yes. So
That's actually easier. It's easier to put together one summons, and it's easier for me to email one summons to my vendor.
Right.
But then they have to understand page 4 has all of the addresses.
What is weird about it, though, is that you have to insert this extra page into this standardized form.
More than one. They actually want the cover page of your lawsuit.
Yeah.
So page 3 is the first page of your lawsuit. Page 4 is the addendum that lists the addresses.
Oh, really? I haven't done.
It's a 4-page.
I haven't included the cover page. Mm-hmm. But so for California, a typical California case, let's say you sue Urjadu. On the first page of the summons, you'll
she's
say,
no longer the attorney.
I know you don't want to sue her anymore, but we did a lot of times.
Okay. But you're not going to have a problem because of the substitution rule.
It's unclear whether that's a problem. If you name the old officer,
if you name them?
Yeah, I've been in that situation before. It's a little dicey.
You don't want to give them an excuse to file a
Yes,
motion.
that's another reason not to name the government officer. List their title, because then you can't go wrong. So on a California case, you're on the first page of the summons. It'll say Urjadu, CO, Office of General Counsel, USCIS, and then the Maryland address, right? And then you'll prepare a fourth page which says to serve. And then you'll list the U.S. Attorney's Office
On page
and
1,
the Attorney General.
You list the first defendant, and then you say see attachment number 2.
Yeah.
And then page 4 will actually have all the addresses. The quirky thing that I've found is that some clerks, if your caption on the complaint does not mirror the caption on the summons,
Yes.
they will kick it back to you.
Right.
So you really need to decide, and you almost have to have the form open for the summons. If you make your caption too long in your complaint, you can't fit it all
Right.
in your summons. So
Yes.
you have to decide, if you want to describe them and have every detail of their title, you may not have enough room. You don't have to list their title.
Right.
You can just list the names.
Right.
Or you can just list the title, but you have to make them match.
Right. Absolutely. I find this...
It's like perm. It's matching.
Yes. I find this practice kind of maddening, where a clerk is enforcing some artificial rule that you have to list the name exactly as in the caption. So if you sue Urjadu, Director, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and then you're doing your mailings by hand, each time you write it out, you have to write Urjadu, Chief Counsel, or Director, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. You're going to be writing that like a bunch of times. So think about how you want to list your caption, especially if you're in one of those jurisdictions where the summons has to match the case caption.
Yeah, they want mirror image because they want the person on the summons getting the notice to have the exact notice of everyone and everything that's being issued.
Right.
Or at issue. So it's...
Right. So if you're in one of those places, just write Urjadu. You don't need to list her title. You can, or alternatively, you can just list the title.
If you're only suing, like I do a lot of EB-5 litigation, we'll sue the acting director of USCIS, Alyssa Emmel, who's the chief of the Immigrant Investor Program Office, and that's it. We'll just name 2 defendants. That's enough.
I used to add Emmel as well. Now, for pretty much anything against USCIS, I just list the director.
And it's gonna be,
and I've never had a problem. Simplify your life, okay?
It'll save you money on you could charge your clients less for service of process.
Yeah.
But these are things you have to know before you quote the fee and before you actually sign your written fee agreement.
Right. And so again, newer practitioners often want to sue everyone in the command chain. I was like that. You really don't need to.
You're creating work that doesn't necessarily bring you... in the State Department, I don't know. I have a coworker who used to review mandamus cases for State Department Visa Office.
Yeah.
She won't tell me what they used to do.
Yeah.
So I don't have the inside tea on how it works.
State Department, you do need to be careful.
I feel like if I sue more people in State Department, I may get more attention.
Yeah.
But with the USCIS, I think you get more attention just by serving the courtesy email addresses.
Right. If it's a case, so the other question is, what level do you go? Right. If it's a USCIS case, you don't need to also sue DHS. It's a waste of time. You can. There's nothing wrong with it. But also, Brian, what's your feelings about naming
SCOPS director?
Yes, like the Service Center Operations Director at some mid-level management entity. What's your opinion about that?
I like suing the Service Center Director when there's a denial.
Yeah.
Because it allows me, when I'm looking at the case, if it says Ravi versus Brennan Singh, I automatically know that's a denial from the Texas Service Center. Mm-hmm. If every single lawsuit you do is against the director or acting director, all your lawsuits look the same. If I sue, Ravi versus Lauren K. Miller, I know that's a denial from Nebraska Service Center. So I like that categorization, especially because if I win, then in Westlaw, it's coded by the actual defendant geographically. If you're only suing the DHS secretary, you're only suing the acting director from USCIS. If you're doing 3,000 lawsuits in 5 years,
you're going to have a couple of Patel versus Jadus.
You just have buckets of the exact same thing over and over. So I don't mind naming. I don't think anyone between the Service Center Director and the director of the agency matters.
I agree.
To me, it's either top or the person that was most literally responsible. And you're not going to sue the adjudicator. You're never going to find out who that person was.
Right.
So that's a rabbit hole. It's not worth going down.
Right. I would add to that, it can also be hard to figure out who the Service Center Director is sometimes.
It is, but
they change, not every year, but
if it's a denial, their name's on the bottom.
Yeah.
Although now I'm seeing the SCOPS director.
But if someone comes to you later or delayed, it might have changed since then.
But if there's an automatic substitution and you're naming the person listed on the denial, the judge is not going to be upset with that. But you can also reach out to the AILA listserv.
Yeah.
Hard to find is who's the National Benefit Director, National Benefit Center Director, who's the National Visa Center Director. Mm-hmm. Those are a little bit more hard to find. You can look on LinkedIn, but crowdsourcing that through your listservs is a good idea. But we sue so often we know.
Just name them by their title, all right? It'll make your life easier. All right. Anything else to say about service of process? A pretty wonky topic, but very important.
No, only just that once you do it and get your system down, it's going to be very, very routine.
Yeah.
It's the first lawsuit against State Department, the first lawsuit against CBP. If you're doing something you're not doing all the time, you're going to find it a little bit more difficult.
Yep.
But once you have done all of these different agencies, it's the same thing over and over. It's just, as you as an attorney, it's quality control. I'm a solo. I do it all myself, so if anyone makes a mistake, it's my fault. But if you're supervising paralegals and law clerks, every time I'm of counsel, every time I do one for my of counsel law firm, I look at the mailing labels, I look at every single summons package.
Right.
I can't delegate the ethical responsibility.
So USCIS's regulation for where to serve them,
Still Massachusetts Avenue?
Well, I'll get into that, but it used to have a mistake. It used to have a mistaken zip code, and I figured this out, and I alerted them, and they issued something in the ECFR the next day, changing the regulation. So I got a regulation change.
Wow! Thank
you. I made a law. Yes, I know. That's my claim to fame.
On your tombstone.
Yes. Now,
CFR.
But there's still a mistake, and this one I brought to their attention. They have not fixed. The regulation says that if service at this address in DC, which is an outdated old address, service in DC unless there is a different address listed at this specific website.
And it's not the one.
You go to that website, and there's no address listed there. There is a different address listed on a different website. Now, most people use that different address that's on their website.
I do.
I seem to be the only person in the world that cares.
Only one in the country that
cares about this. I've told the civil chief in DC about this. I've told the USCIS chief counsel's office about this. No one cares. However, I care, because it's such a simple thing.
You're going to die on that hill.
When the government issues a regulation, it should be correct. So I continue to mail my packages to the office in DC. I know there's no
They're not going to
office there.
challenge service because
Right.
it would be embarrassing for them.
Yes. But this is just my hang up. Most people, you want to just serve them in Maryland like everyone else.
Camp Springs, Maryland, yes.
Yes. All right. Anything else about service?
I think you mine the depths of this topic, absolutely.
Okay. That was a little bit longer than I think we planned, but it really is important to get it done.
It is important.
Yeah. And if you get it wrong, you're going to spend so this video is 40 minutes. If you get it wrong, you're going to spend way more than 40 minutes fixing it.
You're going to have that behavior extinguished through the torture that is, it's going to cost you time and money.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's service of process.